The project came about because of Janina Scott, who is Ridley's wife, but a producer in her own right. And she chased down the rights to this book well over 20 years ago, and was really kind of taken by, I guess, the familial struggle, the power struggle between, what it's like for a family to have a dynasty, a fashion dynasty. And so Janina had an incredible amount of tenacity to stick with it and get this movie made. It's a real testament to a great producer when they stay with something forever. And she stayed with this movie for decades. And I think it's a huge credit to her that it got made and she saw it through. A lot of producers, they get a good piece of material, a book, and they sit on it and they can't get it completed. But Janina saw it to the finish line, so the movie got made because of her. Rid wanted to tell it almost in not quite a docu-style, but in a realistic depiction of what this family was like, and then a little bit of heightened comedy and a little bit of letting the actors kind of take their own path. But more than anything, I think he wanted to showcase the bright and big characters of the Gucci family. The writer who we ended up kind of getting there with the script on, Roberto Metavegna, did a lot of research, but then ultimately threw it all away and kind of created his own narrative, sticking to the big, pillars of what happened, but really creating his own dynamics of character and relationship within the people within the story. So he did a lot of research, read a lot of books, looked at all the court records, but ultimately kind of, defined his own narrative and wove through the story on his own. Essentially, we have Patrizia Gucci marry into the Gucci family. She marries Maurizio Gucci. She's from a lower class family, a family that's successful in their own right in the trucking business, and she kind of gets a taste of wealth and power and what it's like to live this very five-star fancy life. And when she then has a separation with her husband and is kind of cast off from that life, she takes matters into her own hands. Lady Gaga plays Patricia. She is an extraordinary actress, and people probably haven't seen this side of her yet. She did an amazing amount of work and research on the character and fully committed in becoming Patrizia Gucci. She never really broke character. She was always, speaking with the accent, speaking in Italian. And she gives an extraordinary performance as Patricia. You see all these shades of her. She goes from doting and loving to infatuated to psychotic to murderous, all in the course of the movie. The movie, to jump back to one of your first questions, is almost like an opera, the way the movie is telling itself, where you see, you see comedy, you see tragedy, you see drama, you see despair, you see murder. So she plays all those shades through Patricia, and she's the eyes with which we see the film. Adam Driver is a world-class actor and plays Maurizio. He gives a very restrained performance, which is phenomenal. We just worked with Adam on The Last Duel, and he plays an entirely different character called Legree in that movie. So for us to make two movies back to back with Adam and see him play those two different characters was really great for me as a producer to watch him play these two totally different roles. So Maurizio, he's very calculating in a way, but quiet and reserved, keeps his cards very much to his chest. And I think we see him grow from, being almost kind of almost like a deer, like a lamb at the beginning of the movie, and becomes a wolf. And so you see this transformation of a guy who doesn't quite understand what power and money and wealth and status means at the beginning, and he's being led. He's infatuated with his wife, with Patrizia. And over the course of the movie, you see him kind of grow into this more kind of manipulative, controlling, powerful, a bit not violent, but just a bit more of a controlling being and someone who's going to make sure he's in charge of this business in his life. Maurizio, again, starts as kind of very intelligent law student, learning the law, learning the fashion business from an outside perspective of the law, and then understands what it means to have success, partners with a big financial backer, starts to see Gucci grow in a way that it has not grown before, starts to realize that he could have it all for himself, and I think falls out of love, when his wife crosses him. And so we see him again start from this place of being a sheep and then turns into a wolf. Rodolfo is played by Jeremy Irons, and he is another just extraordinary world-class actor. We just have a plethora of these actors. I'm going to sound like I'm saying the same thing over and over, but the actors are all incredible. And Rodolfo plays Adam Driver, Maurizio's father, and he's very protective of him as his only boy. He's widowed. He's a former actor who has been kind of a passive interest in the Gucci brand. And when Stephanie, when Lady Gaga, Patrizia starts to enter into his son's life, he kind of tells him not to follow through with it. He wants him not to pursue her and marry her because he thinks she's in it for the money. Everyone thought that Maurizio couldn't amount to much in this business. Ultimately, they're right. He does grow the business, but I think his spending and the way he carries himself and the way he kind of doesn't mind the shop or the downtaking of him, but he does breathe life into the business with the decision to hire Tom Ford and to build it. Aldo is played by another iconic legend who's Al Pacino. And we see this bright and colorful and a bit sinister character of Aldo Gucci, who is really a great salesman, but also has a bit of a nasty side to him if you cross him or if you try to lead the business in a way that he doesn't want it. And personally, for me, it just was one of the most extraordinary things ever to watch Al, play this character and to work with him. I mean, I've been a fan of his forever, and to see him, go toe to toe with these actors was a cherished piece of my work history. It just was amazing. Aldo wants to commercialize the business at any chance he can. He wants to sell knickknacks and mugs and knockoff purses. He wants to open a mall in Japan. He is the most kind of business sense person of the family. The wonderful Jared Leto plays Paolo under a whole heap of incredible prosthetics and makeup, and I think he wins the award for the most patient with the preparation of getting ready for these wonderful days of work. So Jared is another actor who just went through such a deep commitment process to portray this role. He was never not in character when we were with him. I still haven't even met him outside of his makeup, which is something that we all wanted to give him space, let him do the separation. So he's a bit of the comic relief to the movie. He gives a remarkable performance as Paolo. I really think that he and Aldo could have their own TV show after the movie, and you'll see it as you see the film. You see Aldo embrace his son, both physically and with love, but that he refers to him as his idiot, and he's not a very sharp or successful or substantial person. I think there's a big heart there. He wants to do well. So I think it's a totally different dynamic to Rodolfo and Maurizio. You see a great deal of disappointment in Aldo having to care for his son even as he gets into his older years and worry about him. He's a bit of a liability. So the dynamic's completely different, where Maurizio is this accomplished lawyer who has business intellect and skills, despite the fact that he goes on later to kind of spend a bunch of money frivolously on the company. Paolo's just lost. We went through a great process of finding the right prosthetic person for Jared, and a lot of exploration as to what worked and what didn't, almost to the last minute. And Jared was extraordinarily hands-on and making sure it looked authentic, looked real. I mean, with Ridley's tutelage, Ridley, helped form it and shape it with Jared, and wanted to make sure that when he was in the rugby scene, he was in some of these physical, altercations, when he was under big bright lights, both outside at Aldo's birthday and then also later on at his fashion show, that none of that stuff could read, false or read fake. And so Jared spent hours and hours, weeks with a great prosthetic artist who we work with to make sure that that look was perfected and didn't just look like a joke. It looked really like Paolo Gucci. The beautiful and extraordinary Selma Hayek plays Pina, and she's another character in the movie where you're not quite sure what's happening behind her eyes. She's a bit of a grifter, if you wanted to look deeply into it. Like anything, money can be a blessing and money can really be a curse. And so I think we see a family that runs out of good luck because they're all fighting over the last piece of bread. That's a big piece of bread, the business. So I think you see a family turn on itself, which isn't uncommon. The difference here is it's done in this hugely colorful, violent, murderous, comedic in certain parts, in a way. It is operatic, as I said. It's Shakespearean. It's a huge downfall of a major brand that was started, by their great grandfather. So I think, the family could still preserve and still hold this business, but they don't. No member of the family is still at the company. And so I think you see what happens when family members are pitted against each other to try to squabble or fight over an asset. Transcends fashion. It's human relationships. It's, every core, feeling that I think people have that are wrong. It's like if you feel like you've lost power, or you feel like someone's getting richer than you and you deserve it. I think the brand it's less about the brand and less about this fashion than it is about this infighting and who wants what in the power struggle. It's almost unfathomable to me to think of a filmmaker who can make Alien, Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise, Gladiator, The Martian, All the Money in the World, Gucci. To see that kind of trajectory for a filmmaker, there's not another filmmaker like it. And I know I work with Ridley very closely as his producer, but it is extraordinary to me to think of a filmmaker who can jump in and out of genres so effortlessly and have success in each and every one of them. I don't think there's another filmmaker like it in history. So I think for Ridley to see him jump into this movie was a joy, and whenever he moves toward a project, you see this whole swath of people follow, because it's Ridley Scott. There's no one better. He's a genius, and I don't use that term lightly. He really is a genius. He really hand draws every single frame of the movie. And there are archives and archives of this for years of his filmmaking. So you see when we get to the set, every frame of the film is hand-drawn and colored by him. He does it for months before he preps. He films the movie in his head, as he says. And so when we get to that set, those drawings are handed out to every member of the crew. So everyone knows exactly what we're doing on the day. And that's a cheat sheet that no other filmmaker uses. No one has that to the extent and the creative extent that Ridley does it. The detail that he does it's mind-blowing. So I think the filmmaking team, to answer the question, Darius Wolski, Janty Yates, Arthur Max, Mark Huffam, Yana Cabroni, there's not a better filmmaking team in my experience in the world, because it's reflexive. They know how to work with Ridley, and we do it so frequently. And the way we're able to do it so fast is because of Ridley's leadership and his preparation. There's no one else that does it like that as quickly as he does. No one else can walk onto a set and shoot 6 cameras in under an hour. Actors filmmakers, writers, they all come to set and they're all flabbergasted. Darius is the best DP I've ever worked with. I think he um, complements Ridley so well because of his manner, his work ethic, but also his incredibly low key and affable manner. And I think we had an embarrassment of riches with locations in this movie where we were shooting in the Alps in Milan, like Como and Rome, and everywhere you pointed the camera, it looked really lush. But with Arthur Mack's designing and then Janty's costumes, Darius's photography took even a whole nother level of richness. And so I think he set a beautiful stage. I mean, I'll always think of Lake Como when I think of the cinematography of the movie. We had this incredible drone shot approaching the birthday party for Aldo, and then a beautiful shot right down this very long table with a backdrop of Como in the background. And just the way Derek filmed it, it just was iconic. It just looked extraordinary. I mean, there are still shots that people were snapping off the monitors that just looked like pieces of art. The Gucci brand were terrific to us. They gave us, carte blanche, opened everything for us, and that's very much in thanks to Janina Scott, her relationship with the Gucci brand and the owners, and she paved the way for both the brand to give us the ability to use the title and also the archives and all the fashion that's on hand. So Janty had a Herculean task ahead of her to both hit the authenticity of the period, to use all the Gucci archives, to recreate the archives, to put Lady Gaga in something like, I don't know, 200 different outfits without repeating an earring or ever a piece of clothing. And I think you can see it on camera. I think you can see that authenticity, especially from the period, spanning decades. So that's a really hard task for a costume designer to, hit this so effortlessly to be able to deliver the Gucci movie with authenticity to character, to period, to what that actor did or didn't want, making custom suits for Al and Jeremy and Jared and Adam. I mean, it just was a major task. Arthur, who we're working with again now, this is my fourth movie with Arthur, Napoleon, we're prepping. He's like an encyclopedia. He has this encyclopedic mind of history and periods, and he plus Ridley, hearing the two of them talk when they walk into a space. We were at this cathedral this morning, and they both start talking about the genre, when it was built, what the influences were, who the leaders were at the period, and why that certain space is built that way. So when you have that level of history and knowledge that Arthur has, you can see it in the sets. You can see it in the pieces and the places and where you're going and what artwork's carrying which way. I mean, what it looks like in 70s or 80s New York in an Art Deco period in a stripped down white apartment that we actually shot in Rome, and how that has to look. What are those titular pieces that make you know where you are? How do you make the Alps look rich and opulent when they know that the Gucci family has tons of money? So I think Arthur's knowledge of all of these periods from years of studying and working really is reflected in the movie. Really will never, we wonder what's going to say what his age is, but he's older than I am, and he just won't stop in a great way. He has this curiosity and this insatiability. We have Last Duel coming out October 15th. We have Gucci coming out November 24th. We're prepping to start shooting Napoleon in January. So we just got back from Malta, and we're scouting London right now. The creative genius that I mentioned about Ridley earlier, how he prepares for a movie, how he hand draws a movie, how great he is with actors, how he works so well to welcome people into the creative world he builds, that's matched by this business acumen and tenacity that's relentless. And that's why there's no one like him, and there never will be someone like him. Anybody who loves movies should go see this movie on the big screen. It's just not the same. The fashion shows, Gaga, the opulence, the way it's depicted from the Alps to Lake Como to Rome to Milan. There's not a reason for you I mean, there's no reason to not see this film on the big screen for the experience of Lady Gaga in her second biggest leading role. Hopefully they'll take away just a sense of enjoyment of great movie making and, you know, great artistry on all levels, from Ridley to Darius to Arthur to Janty to the performances from the actors. They'll see this great troupe of people that take their work really seriously but have fun and want to create, a beautiful piece of entertainment. Story-wise, I think they'll take away that, money isn't everything. Control and greed certainly are attributes that can really kind of work against you if you focus on them too much. Gucci has kind of transcended fashion now. Gucci is a brand. Um, it's just kind of in the blood of people in a way. You see Gucci and how important it is, in on the streets of Los Angeles and the streets of Milan or the streets of Rome or New York. You see it from high fashion models and elite to rappers to people in the music business. It transcends every demographic now, and that's why I think this movie can reach so many people, because it's a human story. So I think Gucci is not just a fashion brand. It's almost this iconic, this kind of image of opulence and wealth and success to many people, which led to the downfall of one of the people in the Gucci atmosphere, in the stratosphere, being Patrizia. So I think it is operatic again. I'll say, just to see this kind of tale to start with nothing and go up and hit that height and get too close to the sun and get too close to kind of that idea of wealth and power and everything that she wanted, and then have it just be deflated.